I'm phoning it in. That's all we got at this point.
Hello, gentlemen. We are up to episode 58 of the Three-Body Problem. Costin is back from, well, he's still on vacation, but he's back from wherever he was. How are you, my friend?
I'm back from one someplace and I'm right in the next. I'm actually spending a few days with the family near the famous Dracula's castle in Transylvania, eating a lot of garlic, obviously, and potatoes, and generally good Romanian food, sun, doing a bit of sport, hanging out with you guys on a Friday.
People missed you, man. We missed you last week. We had our live episode at Black Hat, which was a complete blast. Everyone was asking for you. I don't know how we're going to do these podcasts without you, but we missed you. Juanito, what was your takeaway from the Black Hat episode?
I'm trying to remember that right now because my cat just spilled like a coffee all over my shit. So I'm like freaking out.
Flicking around.
I'm like freaking the fuck out right now. Well, okay, let me wing it. Honestly, I love the podcast episode with Brandon, mostly because I mean Brandon's an interesting creature in our world in that he obviously was like a proper threat intel practitioner and then got serious about product and about building a company and about, not just with Passive Total, but he's one of those folks that like got really into the entrepreneurship of it. He was helping people like understand some of like the business and what it takes to start a company and all that kind of stuff. And frankly, we don't have enough of that guidance for threat intel folks. But when you see TI people get good at that is when you see like, Passive Total and these like amazing things kind of come around. So to get his perspective after a few years of essentially like climbing that mountain to its furthest extent of like building the company, selling it into a bigger company, watching that company get bought by a mega giant company, and then figuring out how to do product in there. And so it's actually really fascinating to hear how he thinks about the space, where he thinks sort of the potential is, and what he's excited about. I think it's something that we should all take note on.
I thought he was pretty candid and forthcoming discussing his life at Microsoft post-acquisition. Just to reiterate, thanks again to Brandon for coming and just hanging out with us. I was nervous.
Man.
I was nervous that the Microsoft PR people had gotten to him and he would have gotten all his talking points in line, but he was pretty cool and awesome there. Before I move on, I also want to thank the folks at Binarly for like putting the entire thing together and getting the food and the drinks. Thank all the people for coming out. We had close to 120 people register. We had a packed room of folks. I got to meet a lot of new listeners. I got to meet a lot of amazing things. Costin, did you get to listen to the show at all?
Yeah, of course. I thought it was fascinating to listen to Brandon, especially when he was talking about his time at Microsoft and navigating the world of politics, having to work with other groups to integrate different projects. To me, that was like the highlight of the show. I did notice how he was trying to derail the discussion back into AI, and you were obviously bringing him back. Like, tell us a bit more about how did you do that? And I thought it was fascinating because it's a world that not many of us get to know, obviously. And there are so many lessons that you can learn from how, let's say, a project becomes as popular as Passive Total was and getting acquired by RiskIQ. And then that getting acquired again by Microsoft and getting integrated into Defender Threat Intelligence. So I just love that part, of course, but everything was super, super cool.
I mean, not many of us get to work inside a beast as big as Microsoft, but I thought it was fascinating, the conversation around trying to influence activity in a big company when the scales are that high, when you press one button and it's on millions of machines around the world, and kind of like the demands around how you get products in there. It was a really interesting look inside Microsoft and a good lesson for entrepreneurs as well, that you sell your company to a big, and you go in wide-eyed thinking, okay, now this goal of scaling this thing becomes fascinating, and then you get not necessarily the politics, but the economics of it, the reality of what goes on in those companies, and how, what used to be a $10 million deal is now a $10 billion deal, and the scale of that was really, really interesting for me to listen to.
In a way, every big company is kind of a little market by itself, where you need to pitch your product internally, you need to POC it, and you need to sell it, and you need to support it, do internal user support, documentation, and all those things, which I think it's an experience by itself. Obviously, I think a lot of our listeners have been there, and they know what we were talking about. And again, it was very, very cool to hear it from Brandon as well.
Did you have a sense and a thought on his view of the AI market and where it makes sense to do innovation and investments? Like, he is pretty bullish on the space. He's saying everyone should go and experiment. You know, some will win, some will lose. We'll all learn from it. He talked about specifically perhaps getting rid of the SOC. He talked about some folks in offensive research, some of the things that he liked. Did that resonate with you? And he is an old threat intel practitioner. Is there anything there that resonated with you in terms of how he views use cases for AI and security?
I thought the discussion was very interesting. Although it did feel a bit that he was kind of avoiding the question, or maybe not being very transparent, but about what he's actually doing.
So let's be clear, right? He doesn't want to talk about whatever sort of stealth thing he's got going on.
And doesn't want to burn any of his plans or any of his ideas.
I don't blame him, right? Like, you're in this competitive, sort of space. And sorry,
are you going to stop fucking fingering?
Well, this motherfucker, my cat spilled coffee on the side of my laptop. And I'd like to keep it from being a $10,000 problem. So forgive me. Listen, yeah, okay, we're fine. All right. The one time I'm like,
still there?
Yeah, this motherfucker is like crawling around here, of course. So okay. The thing with Brandon, I understand it, right? Because you're in this weird situation. If you think about it, right? Like, he's got the balls to go and like start a new company in this AI space this early on. And I know a lot of people that want to.
There are 170 companies started, according to that landscape thing that he shared with us on the podcast. It's not early.
But let's think about it. Is early in understanding the true applicability, value, efficient way of doing this, right? Like, if you think about it, like, we might be in the midst of some kind of. You remember, like, the web. Whatever bubble, 2.0 bubble, back in the day when folks got super ultra excited about the internet as a means of e-commerce, and you had a bajillion fucking super well-funded companies come around, and that all went bust, right? That blew up. For
the
good reason.
The dot-com bubble of the 1990s you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about the dot-com bubble in the same way as, like, what could be happening with AI, which is like, yes, there's going to be 1,000 assholes who have no compunction about taking somebody else's money and starting a company because they don't care, right? Like, those are the kind of opportunists who are just going to start a company because it's someone else's money, they can get paid, and, they'll gamble and maybe they'll do well, and who knows? They're just business people. That I don't admire quite so much, obviously, but I think it's reckless. I think it's its own thing because you don't really know what the value proposition is of getting AI to something productized, of getting AI to be used in a way that's not, we built something. The cost is like, we're paying 3x what we make every time this thing runs, right? Like, we're literally running at an insane deficit, but we have a company, we have a cool thing that nobody else can do. And that's hoping that you can run on the fumes of investment forever.
It's all startup life, right? It's all early stage startup life, though, where you grind through and try to find market fit, and you try to find a go-to-market strategy that works.
But you're not usually building, you're not creating a market whole cloth. Like, I think part of the issue here is, like, we're in a really, like, kind of in an investor's paradox right now, where we can all tell that there's opportunity for efficiencies that should disrupt existing markets. At the same time, you can't quite tell what is going to take hold and how much of those markets are going to remain as how far down is the sand going to shift, right? Like, if you say we want to disappear the SOC, and you go, we're going to invest into that. It's like, okay, we're going to do AI services stuff. Cool. If the EDR market gets disrupted completely, then you invested into doing away with like a weird middle part of the sandwich that doesn't exist. There's sort of like a weirdness right now of like just how much of the sand is going to shift. And I'm not saying it's like everything's going out the window. I'm saying it takes either the gall of a used car salesman or, brass balls for somebody who is actually technical and wants to make something happen to go in at it quite at this point. And I think a lot of the investors are feeling that. Like I hear from folks who are going to talk to investors who've got a ton of money, who want to start stuff, and they always kind of like, they all seem to be kind of stuck in this sort of like, yeah, like I see it, but is it the right moment? Are you too early? Are you too late? Is it, are we going to give you $10 million and that's a good, healthy way to kick off something real? Or are you going to spend $8 million on infrastructure and cloud costs and, more importantly, token costs and come out of it with a demo? And like, we still need to give you another 10, 20 million before you're a well-established company. Like the economics of it are just all over the place right now.
Yeah, again, that's the startup bet that someone can land on a piece of IP that disrupts incumbents. I mean, when you look at the incumbents are all invested in AI. I'm sure SentinelOne, you guys are like hard charging on figuring out how do you get AI to automate and optimize things everywhere.
Yeah.
While we were at Black Hat, ChatGPT 5 landed. Did you guys get a chance to play with it? Now the naming seems to have been under control. We just have one ChatGPT 5, and I think there's like certain modes of it.
They still managed to make it a shit show, but yeah.
Costin, did you get a chance to play with ChatGPT 5? Did you have any improvements over what it was? What is your initial feedback?
Look, I played a bit, obviously. I'm not
Your
as
big
rich.
use case is IOX extraction, right?
It is, right. Not only that, but pretty much anything which has to do with threat intelligence. So that's like from summarizing reports, trying to understand the actor behind of the report, summarizing and producing distilled output from a report, which includes, if you want the actor name, short description, things like that. That's pretty much what I am.
You're churning through using it for that purpose. I mean, let me ask the question this way: you used to do all of that manually, copy paste from previous places and so on. Now you have this tool. Is it possible for you to go back to do that manually? Let's say ChatGPT 5 goes offline for 2 weeks, completely offline for 2 weeks. How does that disrupt your life?
So first of all, like I'm not using only ChatGPT. I'm using like 4 different public services, and also playing with an instance of Olama running locally. So even if one goes offline,
give us the review then.
You can leverage the others.
Who is good for what?
Who is good? You're pushing me into an uncomfortable corner because you know what I said before the show, which I said that one of the most overlooked solutions is Mistral. And Mistral is somehow pretty good at this thing.
How European of you.
We give the folks the background on Mistral, because here in the US, Mistral, like, it resonates only with a subset of folks. I mean, the people deep in the trenches. It doesn't bubble up to the surface of everyday usage. Give me a little background. One, I'm wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong. But I don't think it's like, I'm joking about it being a European preference, but mostly because like the French are indexing heavily on that. But I think it's more of like the folks that are comfortable, more excited about some of the open source side of this stuff tend to prefer your Mistrals and your Llamas. And then you've got the folks like myself who are happy to spend money even when you're wasting it. And you go into like the Claude Anthropics and so on. And frankly, I mean, I don't know how many of us are doing legit evals where you go, this is, with some level of certainty, this is actually better than what I could be running myself. I'm going on vibes and burning cash on vibes. So whatever Kostin says about Mistral, I think is more legit.
Kostin, I didn't let you off the hook in answering the question. I just want to make one last point on the Brandon thing, stick a pin on the Brandon thing. Another part of the podcast that I thought stood out to me was when he kind of gave a shout outs to the Chinese for their advancements in innovation and them pushing the envelope forward, and how DeepSeek really changed the dynamics here. which we don't hear a lot. We do a lot of jingoistic kind of like USA here in my, my circles and my peers. Anyway, Costin, can you give me a quick review of who you use what for?
Yeah, and by the way, when DeepSeek came out, it was superior to ChatGPT from this point of view. Again, from my own personal use case, DeepSeek was superior. But then I think ChatGPT caught up and it became better than DeepSeek, and it became better than pretty much everyone else when it comes to threat intelligence tasks. And like out of all the different tools that I use, I can give you like some kind of a small overview. Again, it's purely from my
everybody wants
totally
to hear from
unscientific review.
I need your personal review.
Mistral is pretty good when it comes to like giving it things such as random dumps of text and reports, and to extract the IOCs from there like in a structured way. It's doing a good job, I think. ChatGPT is doing it as well. In my experience, at least, Claude is hallucinating more than the others. It often produces random hashes that get included in the output that were not in the original report.
Is it Claude Opus or Sonnet?
It is a Sonnet. It is the Sonnet. Yeah, perhaps again, I don't have like a lot of money to invest into all sorts of different solutions. But what I thought is that if you're building a system that relies on public services, the best thing to do is to make sure that it works with not just one, but a few, including an offline local model, any model pretty much. Just in case. Still, for sure, ChatGPT running in the cloud is superior to all the local models that I can afford to run on my MacBook Pro with 24 gigs of RAM.
Did you try the open source ones? Like
I did.
The new OpenAI OSS, the 20 billion parameter one is, I mean, I don't know how good it is, but the speed at which it generates tokens on a fucking MacBook is insane. That is the first time I've run a local model and said, okay, like I can work with this locally, reliably, without like just sitting there. Like, yeah, I'm going to get an answer, but it's going to take me 4 minutes. Like, no, that was the first time I think we got like a local model that I'm like, okay, I can build some shit around this. Like I might be able to function without the internet in this case.
Costin, you keep mentioning I can afford what I can afford, what can I afford? Can you like give me a package sum of what are you spending on public AI tools usage in a given month? It's what? 10 subscriptions?
Your addiction. Tell us.
What is the cost of your addiction?
Does your wife know how much you're spending on AI?
She doesn't. No. But she spends. Look, we discussed if we are we sharing accounts? No, we are not sharing accounts. She actually pays for her own ChatGPT account. I pay for my own. So we are contributing to the American economy. Like we're doing our part here. See, we aren't paying for any Chinese DeepSeek thingy. No
That's
way.
Right.
So what I'm spending almost the same amount of money that I spend on VPNs yearly. I spend on LLMs and subscriptions, which is in the range of between $1,000 and $2,000, something like that.
I was gonna say that could go any which way. After we heard about your iPhone budget on here, I don't know that we're operating at the same levels.
What was my iPhone budget? Sorry,
ridiculous. Like it's like I have hundreds of iPhones just sitting around.
But like historically, the amount of money I put into Apple is the equivalent of a very nice apartment, for sure, or a Tesla. I could have bought a Tesla instead of all the iPhones and iPads and other Mac stuff that I have lying at home.
Fanboy hard, man. A cup of coffee just spilled at the beginning of this recording, and it almost destroyed about like just $15,000 worth of Apple hardware that just happens to be sitting to my left. So I'm all for it.
A lot of the
What?
conversation we've been having around AI and security is focused heavily on what the big labs are doing or what's happening in startup
Mm.
land. Can we talk a little bit about how incumbents and Juanito, I don't know if you can talk about this or you want to talk
Before
about this, but how does a big company like
before we talk about that, can I just make one comment? Because you put me into a very tricky corner. You said like, with your budget for AI, like it's only $1,000 per year. Like you could afford more money into. I tell you a secret. I think, look, whatever POC you can do that runs well on a budget of $100 per month, it will run like way better with more money. But if you can achieve your target like POC and demonstrate these capabilities with this kind of a budget, I think you can do pretty much anything. So it's not necessarily that I can't afford to put more money, but I think that if you achieve these things with this computing power and this capabilities and these APIs, I think you can prove it to anyone that it can scale with let's say more resources.
I think you're looking at the true dilemma, and it's tying a lot of like the discussions we've been having so far. So in a way, we're kind of getting at this backwards. But Kosin, you're hitting on the true dilemma of being an AI forward company or a startup or whatever the fuck you want to be in this day and age, which is there's proving what's possible, and then there's proving that it's repeatable, efficient, and effective, and under what parameters. And that is I think it's a very tricky proposition right now, particularly for anybody that has to show value in immaterial ways. Like in some ways, I'm starting to come around to thinking that I know I've said that the legacy companies, and I said it during the Brandon episode, right? Like the legacy companies are going to have a terrible time getting on the AI train, and a startup is going to do much better. That said, the legacy companies have more immediate feedback mechanism to prove the value and worth of this AI stuff than the startups. The startups can go and build you a brand new, brand spanking, awesome platform that does evals, and it tells you what model does better at this, and it enables all this stuff, and it does all your piping and whatnot. And then the problem becomes a go-to-market problem about saying, we have a really cool thing. We have shown, like, you look at a Dreadnought, and they're our friends, and they sponsor LabsCon, and like, I love these guys, Will, Martin, Brad, everybody. So in no way am I talking down about Dreadnought, but I think Dreadnought has built an insanely cool platform for all this agentic stuff for security. The challenge you get is the people that understand the value of their platform are people who are already well steeped in AI stuff. And I would kill to use that. The problem you're going to have as that startup is, how do you go to market with that, telling people, hey, yes, sure, you want this flashy use case, the RSA use case about whatever the fuck AI is going to give you. In order to have that reliably, you need this platform. And people go, well, is it worth the money? What is the price discovery point at which you go, this is worth it? Do you need people inside of these companies to be able to know how to leverage a platform like that, to be able to extract the value from? So like the startups are building cooler things that are more on the edge of what AI can do, but they still need to fight an ignorant market as to how it's meant to use those things. Whereas the legacy companies are going to have a harder time, because culturally changing anything in an existing company older than 10 years is a fucking nightmare, especially if you don't have like some proper leadership at the top. But whomever does sneak in even a smidge of AI through the door will very quickly be able to say, oh, we just spent 3 weeks on this thing, and this job that used to take 10 people 2 months is now getting done automatically, repeatedly all the time. And at that point, like, you can attach metrics for efficiency and productivity and money saved and money spent in ways that are so concrete that I think those transformations can gain momentum very quickly.
You kind of dovetailed into the question I was asking. It's how does I don't view Sentinel-1 necessarily as an incumbent, but you guys are an incumbent in the EDR space that a lot of startups at Black Hat was nipping at, like, market share where you guys are leaving gaps and so on. Not necessarily, I don't want you to get into Sentinel-1 stuff, but how does a big company think about startups nipping at their heels? We watched EDR do it to the old AV industry, and I saw the old AV industry thumb its nose at the concept. When CrowdStrike came aboard, I remember people at Kaspersky being very, very dismissive. Look where we are today. How do you guys think from a big company perspective about what's happening in startup land?
So I think you asked at least two very interesting questions, and I don't want to conflate them. So I'm not avoiding the Sentinel-1 thing. I'll come back to
whichever one you want.
No. I'll come back to the Sentinel-1 one. But let's talk about how incumbents and big companies are looking at the startup space. And I can't speak
because you're acquiring to.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, look. Let me step out of Sentinel-1 for a second and just speak to the big companies, because I think there's a very interesting dynamic happening there where. Depending on how big a company we are talking about, there's an immediate blending from being a company that does whatever, search, say, Amazon selling you stuff, whatever, to also on the other side of this house is a hyperscaler and an AI frontier lab. And that's a very odd situation to be in. That I think is insulating the really, really, really big companies from necessarily worrying about, some AI startup is going to come and eat our lunch. Like even at Google, right? Like we've been criticizing Google for the sluggishness in their ability to like properly pump AI into their stuff, properly productize it.
You'd be shocked at how many people are using Gemini as part of their daily workflow. I mean, we thumb our nose at it, but like my mom is using Gemini in her Gmail all the time, just naturally.
Well, I was thumbing my nose at it, and I stopped thumbing my nose at it. That like the best thing Google ever did was buy DeepMind. That was the one investment. I think it was like $400 million or something, and people were like, "What the fuck?" Like that was the greatest investment Google has possibly ever done. And I say that knowing they have VT and all the other wonderful things on Earth, but like the best thing they did for their future was buy DeepMind, because while Google was floundering and fucking up, it seems like DeepMind was like the strong base on the back that really got them to be a frontier lab, to take advantage of the fact that they have all that infrastructure, so on. But like, anyways, to answer your like the broader question, I think the mega companies are feeling very safe in that you don't feel like you're not playing with the technology that might oust you. And I get the sense that they can afford to wait and see what starts to work. Yes, they need to pump stuff into their products, but I don't think they're feeling the kind of like heat that you would expect to come for incumbents with a new technology coming around that's like a big disproportionate order of magnitude enabler. The middle companies, the ones, you get below that $1 trillion market cap, that's where I think there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of vague concern. There's a lot of fear that we don't know who's going to come around doing what. And I think a lot of companies have sat back and had to really get honest with themselves about what their moat actually is. And it's funny to put it in those terms, considering that like so early on we had this whole Google memo about like we have no moat, and OpenAI has no moat, neither do we. Like nobody has a moat because of open source and models. I think that was a naive view that looked at intellectual property purely as the only value creator and forgets hardware, forgets the importance of having a GPU farm and a hyperscaler and having CapEx. Like companies need to start thinking again about owning hardware and infrastructure, because what we're getting into is we're saying the latest, greatest, most powerful technology humankind has access to and companies have access to is something that you must rent from somebody else. So we are all becoming serfs as companies, where you go, the only way my company can provide its product is if I pay 0.03 cents a call to Anthropic. And you go, is that really where you want to be? That's on top of the however many cents you needed per gigabyte storage, compute, and transfer for cloud infrastructure. Like we are in this kind of weird spoiled space where a lot of companies got way too used to the cloud and they're way too comfortable with the idea of having their whole innovative whatever stacks depend on some externality.
Yeah, but
So
we're not shifting back to an on-prem model for everything anyway. I mean,
we may not be, but I'm arguing that we should really consider it. Like for personally, I know that I'm a little off and a little weird in this, but I believe that the cloud was a poison pill for many, many companies, not just startups, big companies too. Because if you think about it, getting to work at Google as briefly as I did, I learned to appreciate just how much of their innovation comes from idle resources sitting around. Someone at Google can go, man, I think if I write this thing in this way, I might be able to do this, search thing in a really fast, crazy way. Like if I index it in this way and I put, let's say if I pre-process this giant set of data and index it one time, then all of a sudden everybody here is going to be able to do their job like 30 times faster. And like it's a hypothesis. What happens? A startup goes, well, your little hypothesis is going to cost us $55,000 to run in a day, and we don't know if it's going to work. Most companies go, haha, no. A company like Google or Amazon or whomever goes, well, we have all these fucking servers, use whichever ones are not getting used. And that's something that you see with like companies, like everybody's, for example, ignoring the true power of Nvidia as a company in this space. Like, it's not because, okay, they're amazing at hardware and they're powering everything and they're making money hand over fist. But like, what I'm more interested in is what are the people who work at Nvidia doing with all of those idle GPUs that are sitting around? What can you do when you are truly rich in AI and can use daddy's credit card however you want and not worry about it and experiment and try new things in computing? And I think this is a massive tangent, but my point is like to your question about investment, like I think that a lot of companies have fucked up by not having any infrastructure, by not spending on servers, not spending on storage, and now also not spending on some kind of native GPU capacity that means that people can experiment and people can try things. And, hell, even if they're not doing something cutting edge, Ryan, like, okay, we figured out how to do this one thing with an open source model. But if we try to run this thing for every single time that we get a Salesforce email or whatever, then it's going to cost us this much and we don't have that money, so it's not worth it. You go, okay, but if you had one rack in the back that is going to cost us however much right now, you can run that forever.
Yeah, but who's going to maintain it and patch it? The cloud solved all those problems around maintenance and patching and auto updates and so on. Like you're gonna put an IT team back together to try to secure that infrastructure. I mean,
look, I'm not saying that's the solution for everybody, and I'm not saying that that's what all companies should do for themselves and their own stuff. If you're a manufacturing company, a pasta company, or whatever the fuck normal product company, go rent your stuff from everybody else. Though, what AI solution are those companies getting to, right? Like, there's a weird thing happening here where I wonder if a lot of the people that are getting laid off now or that feel like they're going to lose their jobs, how many of those turn into like AI utilities, consulting AI, like roving consultant for AI? Like, I remember talking to my dad, who, was a CFO and like does a lot of like financial stuff for companies. And it was routine for them to a mid-sized company to get consultants to come in and work their CMS and their databases and their whatever for their stock inventory and all that shit. And we look at all that stuff as like legacy and ridiculous, but you want to tell every company on earth that they need an AI transformation? Who the fuck is going to do that for them? Like, there is a lot of opportunity just in piping this, like running the plumbing for this AI stuff. The same way that like one of the fastest growing jobs in America right now is electrician, because these fucking data centers need somebody to be able to like run cables and power and do HVAC and AC stuff. Like shit's just changing, but it's fascinating.
Costin, some closing thoughts on the models and use cases for you. I want to move on to the news. We're half an hour in and we haven't touched the news item yet.
I can, but do we want to go this rabbit hole?
I don't want to go too deep. I don't want to go too deep into the rabbit hole, but I don't want one of the feedback I get from the listeners is that you guys, Costin starts a point and then you guys go off on a tangent and then I'm waiting for Costin to finish his point and then you go on to something else. So I'm just giving you a chance to wrap up.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow, you see?
I get extremely anxious when you guys start talking about efficiency. And I wonder if this is like one of the biggest dangers of the whole AI revolution is increasing efficiency. Because the moment that efficiency increases, and suddenly, let's say you needed 10 people to do threat intelligence, and because efficiency is higher, now you need 2 people. And you apply this pretty much to every domain out there. And let's say in 1 year or 2 years, robots come. And you don't need like 10 people for a job. You need 2. And the whole idea of capitalism and the whole financial ecosystem in the West depends essentially on the ability of people to buy things. And people buy things because they have jobs. But when out of 10 people, 8 don't have jobs anymore, they can't buy things anymore. So it doesn't matter that you're more efficient when nobody can buy your products. So when I try to think about problems, I'm thinking like, how can I do more with the same resources instead of doing the same with less? So can I improve the output? Can I, let's say, double the amount of data that I produce, the reports that I produce with the same resources, while keeping the costs in the same range? And I think you need to balance. This is one of the things which worry me a lot when I hear people talking about efficiency. And Juan knows, because we discussed this in Singapore on like Marina Bay Sands in the cafe place about the future of humanity and efficiency and capitalism and where the whole thing is going, right?
I mean, so I have strong thoughts on this. Yeah.
Tell us.
No, I mean, I have very strong thoughts on it in the sense of my pet project somewhere in the back of my head is that we need to re-envision all of cybersecurity as a new form of cybernetics. And that's a very complex way of saying, like, we need to start thinking about like systems thinking, efficiency, and dynamics at a time when we have commoditized evaluative power. When you talk about something like this, like the same thing you described, Kosin, I would argue, doing more with the same resources versus doing the same with less. It's the canonical discussion about efficiency in the capitalist system, right? If you read Weber on like the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, the idea was like Weber argues that the difference between European economics and whatever capitalism was born in the West, in the US, essentially is a matter of that dichotomy between whether you're okay. Like if I tell you right now you make $10 and you work 8 hours and you make that's how you make $80 a day, and I tell you, okay, I'm going to pay you $20. The traditionalist goes, okay, I'm going to work half the time and make the same amount of money. The capitalist mentality is great. Now I work the same amount of time and I make twice as much money. There's this discussion about what the appropriate way to like incentivize the right dynamics to grow versus have stability and like all these things. I think that we need to be thinking about AI in those like pseudo-economic terms about efficiency. And a lot of industries, first of all, everyone's going to feel the reverberations of this. And at no point am I saying that this is what I want, or that things are going to be smooth, or that everyone's going to have a nice time, or that I'm going to be safe, or you're going to be safe, for anybody else. Moments of great chaos are phenomenal opportunities, but chaos creates uncertainty, it creates pain, and it creates, it is not nice. Change is not nice. Now, if we can get away from the human component of it for 5 seconds, what I would argue is cybersecurity is a failed project. I said this in the last podcast, and I've said several times. We have all gotten used to a very low performance. Like, our scorecards are fucking terrible in terms of cybersecurity as a project. They're not in terms of like us understanding the science of it, the intricacies of it, the possibilities of it, the dynamics of it. So we've done a great job exploring what's possible in the space, what helps, what doesn't help, what hinders and doesn't. But we have not been able to in any way bring that to bear in an even and predictable fashion to most people who use technology. So in cybersecurity in particular, I don't think we should be afraid of any focuses on efficiency or increased capabilities or whatever. If anything, an increase in autonomy and autonomous capability is what's been missing for us to be able to address this. Like, it made no fucking sense when the cyber strategy and CISA and everybody was saying, oh, well, we have jobs for, I don't know, like we're missing 50,000 cybersecurity professionals. And you go, well, where the fuck do you think you're going to get them out of? Like, just thin air? Like, there's no training here. There's no real, it's all apprenticeship model stuff. Universities aren't pumping out capable people. Where are you going to get 40,000 people to more effectively do this and efficiently apply this? My argument at this point is we only had, let's say, 10,000 capable or 5,000 capable threat intel practitioners, and they were trying their best to scratch the surface of the problem because they could only do so much. Okay, what happens when every one of us can do 10 times as much? And then I'm not saying there's efficiency to the system. I'm not saying that that there's some perfect central planning that's going to somehow fix this. But in some way, if we only had 10,000 threat intel people and 5,000 threat intel people, and they were mostly clumped together in specific companies. I have 50 of them. You have 50 of them. Google has 2,000 of them or 200 of them. And then most companies have none. Then being able to get...
This is the state of cybersecurity, though. The haves and the have-nots. There is nobody serving small and even...
This is the first time I think we can make the argument that we have mechanisms that mean that we can start to distribute this more evenly. The main job, I think I will not speak to what people need to do societally. I don't know what the fuck is going to happen to most industries. I'm not saying I don't care. I'm saying I'm staying in my lane. With cybersecurity, we are fools if we look at this thing and go, oh my God, please don't change anything. Please leave things the way they were. No, not only have we not been doing great as a project, we have not been getting the love we deserve from corporate overlords because, well, if I have 100 security people with a good budget, I get hacked. And if I have 10 people and no budget, I still get hacked. So fuck you. I'm not going to invest anything into this. No career growth, no budgets, no nothing. And then when we get popped, then I'll spend $10 million and bring in Mandiant and a PR firm that's going to make us look good. It's not like we're in a good place, guys. We need to change this shit.
Is there anything that can happen that can soothe this anxiety, or you just feel like it's an inevitable path, and this anxiety is over the inevitability of it? Or is there something that you think we should, as a society, be thinking about managing?
I think that we are way past the moment when kind of a soft takeoff was possible, and nowadays it's just this crazy race to whoever is the first to have the most powerful AI model
for
in
nuclear,
the world,
right? Or something
for anything essentially. Whoever gets first to the point where they have an AI that can rewrite itself into the super intelligence, and that one can do whatever it wants to do, from folding space, time travel, solving
quantum
cancer, free energy, and so on and so on. And I think we're way past the point when kind of a soft takeoff was possible. But what I can say is a good news. Even like with the efficiency cuts, right? Like people will lose their jobs. Obviously, when you have like 10 engineers, you're gonna keep two. Those two you're gonna keep will be the best engineers. So I think like very slowly we will move into some kind of situation where the best of the best will still matter. Those will still be very valuable, and the companies will still need those. And the others probably will have to become electricians, plumbers, and just change their jobs. There will be for sure always like interest into psychology and all sorts of other kind of services that take human feelings into account, if you want. Technically, the best of the best will remain. Like the best podcasts, like the best interviewers, the best commentators. I think they will survive. It can't be long. I mean, until we start seeing the three AI buddies problem podcast with three AIs talking between themselves.
How is it different from this?
Yeah,
maybe not as funny as us. Like not with our jokes, bad jokes, and
no
humor.
one's spilling
right?
coffee.
No,
So you
no
see-
cats.
You see an unemployment problem down the road, like a real unemployment problem
yeah.
among the educated.
You don't wanna call it. I mean, it feels like you're trying to kind of, how to say,
I try to understand your anxiety.
avoid.
If it's real, yeah.
My anxiety is that all the growth and prosperity is based on the fact that people have jobs and earn money they can use to buy things that other people produce.
At this level of scarcity and at this level of, and in this method of distribution. Like, I think, look, I agree, Kosin, and anybody who thinks I'm not concerned is just kind of misinterpreting my nonchalantness because I want to.
You're rolling your eyes every time the man says he's anxious.
No. I'm not rolling my eyes. It's just like I can see what that anxiety is based on. And I don't think that it's illegitimate as a human being living through this, because shit's going to be rough as things change, and things don't change fast enough. And like I've said it before, like we're living in the decay of 20th century concepts. To me, the reason I look at this, and it's not that I demur that things are, it's not that I don't mind that things are changing. I almost want them to change faster, because I think the biggest issues are going to come from that in-between period where you don't know what the thing is going to look like and enable, like what the next stage is going to look like and enable. But the thing that you currently have is not working. And it's that in-between period where you get massive unrest and people being unhappy and periods of like way too uneven distribution of benefits and so on, that creates like chaos. And I think the San Francisco people are fucking morons when they don't think about, when they think that this AI thing is just gonna fucking happen, and that at no point people are gonna look at them and decide that, you know, maybe it is, I don't know, the progress of humanity is that fucking data center. Well, let's burn it the fuck down, right? Like this idea that that it is inevitable that we will get to this perfect, wonderful place, and like all this AGI concerns and bullshit. Like I actually
consciousness. Be mindful of the AI's consciousness.
No, it drives me nuts, because I think it's all of this vision is built not on a good assessment of humanity, and not on a good vision of where we should be going, not on a concern of what this can do for us, but actually on the same faulty premises of a bunch of princelings in San Francisco who don't know how the rest of the world works and have forgotten what it's like to interact with normal human beings. If you cause enough pain, people are going to find you. They're going to find your stupid little, warehouses and burn them the fuck down if they need to. And my point isn't that there's some grand uprising. It's simply that approaching this with the same callous mentality of like, well, you're just going to come with us, and we're going to drive you off a cliff and you're going to love it. I don't know that that's necessarily the best way to think about this. But
Yeah,
in any
it
case,
worked for them for privacy and for all the other stuff that they just kind of thumb their noses at. Like
Yeah, but-
Facebook, for instance, would just take a slap on the wrist and just do as they please. I feel like that's the mentality they're bringing along. Like, you'll come with me, whatever.
You're absolutely correct. That is the mentality they're bringing along, but privacy didn't keep people from eating. Like privacy problems and even breaches and like whatever the fuck it is that you didn't like about whatever intellectual abuses were happening, they seldom were causing the kind of reverberations where people couldn't eat. They couldn't afford to, houses, and they couldn't, take care of their children. And the San Francisco folks have gotten inured to stepping over homeless people and like on their way to like their $1 billion whatevers, their 15 houses. So yeah, that's not the right mentality to think about this. Now, what I will say is, I think we should be paying closer attention to the banalities of something like Star Wars to think about like how we should be envisioning this stuff. And I know that's a weird comment, but I think what we're in the midst of is we have just commoditized evaluative power, which means that we can artificially produce discernment and have it evaluate things big and small. And what that creates is a completion of the basic requirements we had for greater autonomy. And we need to reconsider everything we talk about and everything we're concerned about on those terms. So, for example, when Kosin says the economy is based on people buying things, having the money to buy things, and having like that's not just like, that's what we think about when we say, hey, we're going to lose our jobs. People are not going to have money to buy things. You go, okay, fine. But that's only thinking about what this change in autonomy does to current jobs and the money that comes in your pocket. Now, what do you need that money for? And why are we buying things from others? Like right now, in the 20th century, we created a distributed model of manufacturing that has meant that we need all kinds of global trade to produce things in mass quantities without knowing how much we actually need, and putting money forward to buy these things and import them and then hope that people pick them up. And eventually that changed with the internet, because all of a sudden you can have more, especially with the pandemic, you could have more of a clear sense of like direct to consumer type requesting. So you could buy small batch stuff directly from the people making it in China, and they would ship it your way. And then, now I can buy like a single run of whatever. Or like my friend Kyle can decide that we all want titanium keycaps on our keyboards, and you request it from a company in China. They make it for a nominal fee and they ship it to you. And that's actually why I think you're seeing all this push for tariffs. I'm not saying that's a smart thing. I'm not saying that's the best, that it's been done in a smart way or that's the way to go about it. But the people who are very concerned with like global economics are going, all the manufacturing is over there. Everything, people can now buy things directly from over there. And basically, we're just screwing ourselves from anybody having successful local business models. But I would argue that as you increase that autonomy, especially with all the discussions about robotics, the idea of needing mass manufacturing plants to make mass runs of things to ship across the entire planet changes. The idea of needing to interact with a whole city's worth of shops and supplies and warehouses and people providing services changes. And that's why I say, like, we should look at Star Wars, but for the banal parts of it. Because what's really fascinating to me about Star Wars is you see people living in desolate desert planets, and it's a family of 3 living on a fucking farm manned by robots. And they're not dying, they're not starving. And the idea, like, I'm not saying that's where we're going. I'm saying that look towards that and reconsider and recontextualize, what does a family need from a quote unquote global economy in a world where you have robots and small scale manufacturing and different distributions of power, and you don't need a human being to go and essentially spend time configuring and pushing buttons and whatever for every piece of technology to manage your food, your water, your, whatever. Like, if we're going to think about how is this going to affect our jobs, like, that is the concern of the next, like, let's say 15, 20 years. And I know that that's the real thing. That's what human beings should be concerned about. But when we talk about the vision and like what this enables, we should start to reconsider just what is necessary about a global system of manufacturing and distribution, what is necessary about mass manufacturing, and what is necessary about having entire companies of 2,000 people to accomplish tasks instead of having, 100 companies of 20 people that can each take on different tasks that were otherwise considered not worth the time, not worth the investment, and not enough ROI to measure, to merit that amount of people working on it. I think that's what's changing.
Costin, are you happy with that tangent?
It's exactly what I was saying. From my point of view, again, the problem is not with the AI lack of soft takeoff. The problem is with the social order and the model that will not survive this sudden change of parameters. And in a way, you can say that we find ourselves at the crossroads.
Yeah.
And there's Star Wars on one hand and then Star Trek on the other. And both of them will be very painful. But in the end, I hope that we make it to the Star Trek side of things.
Mm-hmm.
How far away are we from this future that you guys are surmising about? Is it a 4-year window? Is it a 10-year window? It's a 50-year window?
I don't think it's 50.
Decade,
it's less.
Yeah.
Maybe a decade or two max.
Yeah. Because
by 2035, we'll be dealing with some social turmoil associated with this in some way.
I think we're going to be dealing with social turmoil before that. I think things will hopefully start to make sense as to what the next thing is in like the next 10 years or so. Again, this is with AI up to the point that it's gotten to here. I think AGI and all that bullshit is just like you're living in like a fairy tale land nobody asked you about.
You're raising VC money. Come on.
Yeah, it's nonsense. And they'll eventually stop talking about that shit and get more realistic. But for now, it's nonsense. At the same time, like what Kostin and I are describing goes hand in hand with some other changes. And it's why I really wanted to point to Rob Gilduda and like those folks' piece in Semi-Analysis about like robotics and like robot manufacturing and the crisis that we're in the US, because we can't build this shit at all. We have some of the best people to come up with this stuff, but all of the advanced manufacturing is concentrated in China, Taiwan. We discussed this already. We said, right, like what happens when all of a sudden you have all these robots to like till the fields and build things and whatever, but the country that already monopolized manufacturing is the only country that can reliably make these things in droves. So you go, China is poised for this like insane hockey stick ability to produce things on top of what already was the greatest ability to produce things on the planet. Thank you, Apple and other companies that so recklessly invested into that space. So what happens, right? Like we could be on the cusp of this wonderful like situation where all of a sudden there's a robot in everyone's home and people just aren't faced with as much hardship and they have more help. And like, you need a thing. Well, why don't you have it 3D printed at the local whatever and like that kind of stuff. Or we can keep going into this boring and insane dystopia where no, not only did we rely on China for everything, now like the Chinese are fucking building skyscrapers with robots and we're all sitting around like in this paltry situation trying to like rub two sticks together to like figure out what the fuck we're doing. So the future is all about these like physical distributions. It is at the end of the day, geography. What's the saying? It's like geography is I don't know. There's some kind of predetermination around like people's geography, sort of like determining the fate of nations. In that sense, it's also what's going to end up happening to us in how this all plays out. We have gotten way too wired to the internet and think way too much on abstract terms that say wherever I'm standing, I have access to all the same things as Kostin, and like we're 4,000 miles away from each other, and that disregards the need to actually like position things, move things, get rare earth minerals out of some shitty place halfway across the planet, bring it over here, refine it, put it into a thing, build the thing, sell the thing, ship the thing, right? Like there's a lot of that reality that we need to take into account in our assessments of these things, because it's not all about the software. None of it's about the software.
Kostin, on that front, I wanted to give you a chance to weigh in on something we talked about last week, which was Nvidia feeling the need to put out an advisory saying that there's no kill switches, no backdoors in our GPUs. This is related to geopolitical tensions over export controls and the ability for Nvidia and AMD to sell certain advanced chips to China. It's all caught up in that whole murky world. You don't know if it's tariff discussions or what. But the fact that they had to put this out to kind of quell some concerns alongside news in China that the government is dissuading Chinese companies from buying foreign chips. Do you see a risk here at all? And is there a legitimate need from Americans and from these bigger companies to be able to track where these things are sold? There's a million wrap-up questions there, but I wanted you to get a chance to weigh in on the NVIDIA response.
Well, let's just very quickly remember what happened on the Nvidia front recently, because I think a bunch of things have happened. One of them is they put out this blog about we don't have any kill switches, no backdoors, which is true, obviously. One thing that we need to keep in mind, by the way, is that still to run the NVIDIA GPUs, you need the NVIDIA drivers. And the NVIDIA drivers actually do send telemetry. I like for my own computers, which have NVIDIA chips, I blocked all the telemetry endpoints, but I can tell you that they're contacting these telemetry endpoints almost nonstop, like over and over again. So
there is a tracking mechanism.
All the NVIDIA drivers send telemetry, all of them. And you can obviously verify that. And perhaps you can't say it's a kill switch. Obviously, it's not a backdoor, but nevertheless, it's a mechanism. And I think NVIDIA can always say how many GPUs in China, if they are connected to the internet, obviously, send this telemetry. So that's one of the things. The other one is that now Trump allows NVIDIA to sell to China if NVIDIA and AMD pay 15% of the profits to the U.S. government, which is also like one of the recent very interesting happenings in this story. And the third one, which I think was also very interesting, is they reported like some kind of tracking devices inside the GPU boxes, inside the crates, right? Like FBI tracking devices, which I was wondering how big are those? Are they like Apple AirTags? Like it turns out, according to the reports, some of them are, I don't know, as big as like this thingy here, like one of my batteries. Other are maybe smaller, like the size of a smartphone. So the size maybe differs, and also
you could put trackers on them little beepers in Lebanon, right?
But what I was wondering, like, are they like in the end? Are they putting AirTags? Like perhaps that's, I don't know, the cheapest, smallest possible imaginable thingy that you can embed into something. You can even put it in the GPU itself. Like, let's be honest, someone could just super glue Apple AirTags inside the case of the GPU, because typically there's enough space in there to put
and the
that
fears
thingy.
For this tracking is sanctions evasion, right, Juan?
Yeah, though. Look, yes, that the whole point is like, where are these things going? Because of all the discussions that happened around DeepSeek and being like, oh, they got their hands on the GPUs and whatever. And I'm not even sure that that's like the right reading of that story in the first place. It just, how politics goes, right? Like there's the reality of a situation, then there's like the New York Times version of a story, and then the DC people, policy people who like live based on that version of reality, and they make decisions to compensate for that version of reality, and the rest of us sit here and go, what the fuck, what problem are you people solving, right?
Listen
Like
to this DC guy.
no, it makes no fucking sense. Like it never made any sense. The whole thing about just keeping them from having GPUs, keeping China from having GPUs, is a fantastic way to encourage China to make their own fucking GPUs. B, because they lack the manufacturing capacity to build GPUs. Sure,
but I mean, this doesn't stop them from making their own GPUs.
Exactly,
selling to them doesn't stop them. You're suggesting that they're not. I mean, have we gone down the intellectual property theft world of?
Well, that's my point. Like, you're not going to keep them from stealing however Nvidia makes H1000s and whatever, and like figuring out their own way. And moreover, Huawei is starting to sell their own, and that was part of the whole announcement about like, oh yeah, these are all backdoored. You go, yeah, because there's a national champion that wants to sell you their own versions of GPUs. At the same time, it was always self-defeating because these people could go and rent GPUs online. So there was no prohibition on some company just renting, however many GPUs. Availability and cost and whatnot, but I'm saying you weren't really keeping them from it. Now, I do commend the Trump administration on figuring out how to get corporations to pay taxes. That's all the fuck. That's all. Like, yeah, you found a different way to fucking loop this thing, but like
to get these big companies to pay a percentage of their profits,
profits to the government. They're called taxes. And that's I'm glad that we have found some way that to make it sound palatable to U.S. companies. But
you pass it like a joke. But I mean,
I'm not joking. I'm like,
there's a weird component to purchasing export control rights, though. I mean, like it goes down a really murky corridor.
No, I'm not saying that I like the way we're doing it. I'm not saying that I think that, but the whole situation's fucked. But look, man, for all of the woes that we have in this country, it's all a very disingenuous conversation built on top of our unwillingness to look at the richest companies in the history of humanity, the greatest concentrations of wealth. I'm not talking about billionaires. I'm not shitting on the Valley people. I'm just saying Apple, Amazon, Google, etc. have been able to amass a greater amount of wealth than anything else in the history of humanity. And they don't pay any fucking taxes. And then you look at the U.S. with a, $13 trillion foreign debt. And we're trying to figure out where we can scrounge some pennies and how we're going to be able to like manage to pay for Social Security. And you go, well, what about those giant towers of money? And you go, no, don't touch those. It's like, okay, look, I'll give you a deal. Here's my Faustian bargain. Forget corporate tax. Cut your entire finance department. We will take 15% of your profits flat. You don't need accountants anymore. You don't need all of these like shell companies.
I like it.
All of the lawyers and everybody, all these assholes that you're paying to try to game this system into paying 3%. Cut that cost. Just pay the fucking government 15% flat, and for any company above $1 trillion market cap.
They'll find 5 loopholes and 5 workarounds.
They'll break. All of a sudden, Alphabet will break up, and now you have like
profit
Google
will
1, 2, 3, 4,
else.
5, right? Like, they'll find some other. But my point is, like, part of our suffering is an unwillingness to get these mega companies to just pay their fucking taxes, and it's a difference of order of magnitude. That's what people don't understand. People don't understand. The human brain does not understand the difference between 1 million, 1 billion, and 1 trillion. Those are not, it's not just a little bit more. It's like order of magnitude, exponential amounts. So why the fuck are we all sitting around staring at each other going, well, maybe you should pay 1% more and you paid 1%. I was like, guys,
15 from all of them.
What
right?
the fuck are you talking about? So anyways, if this is the way, if we figured out that like the way to do it is just to shame American companies into paying 15% of their profits when they're selling to places we don't like. Okay, it's not good for national security. It's not necessarily it's not actually solving the problem you claim to be going at. But like, all right, get some fucking money out of these people, I guess.
Speaking of big companies,
China. I was just saying, China will have the same kind of chips that everyone has at the moment, like the Nvidia level, top of the shelf Nvidia chips, probably in 10 years. The question is, of course,
10 years,
what
the US will be 10 years further.
What everyone will have. And one anecdote, by the way, about China and there's discussions that the latest generation of the Huawei chips, they are almost as good as Nvidia. I don't know. I'll tell you a story from around here. So the owners of the place where we are staying now, they applied for this government program to install solar panels, to cut down on electricity costs. So they put solar panels on one of their buildings, Huawei hardware to process, the energy on Huawei inverter. Everything's working flawless, fantastic. Free electricity, reducing costs. So they said, let's do one more. So they installed another set of solar panels on another building here. Again, Huawei hardware for everything. Then they hook pretty much all the laundry machines, TV sets. They hook all that stuff to the second Huawei installation. And then things, start burning. One of the laundry machine burns and TV start burning, and people come and check. They say no, the hardware is fine. Everything's fine. Why the hell are the laundry machines burning? The quality between this building and that building is like a moon to the sun. I don't know. The difference is huge. The quality is huge, and nobody can actually figure out what's wrong with the second pack of Huawei hardware. So I think that this difference in quality is probably what stops them from achieving the same level as Nvidia have with their chips now.
You're absolutely correct. And I'll give you 2 points on that. The first one is I would point everybody to Bunny Huang's Black Hat Singapore keynote, which Kosin and I got to see in person a few months back. Where he explains brilliantly. It was one of the best keynotes I've seen in a long time. But he explains sort of the different levels at which we could be talking about hardware backdoors. So he's going through sort of the manufacturing process and where you could actually put hardware backdoors, what seems what's actually viable, what makes sense from the perspective of somebody who's a hardware hacker who understands the supply chain pipeline at an intimate level. I point to that one because what was more fascinating to me than anything to do with hardware backdoors was actually the discussion of the skills and agglomeration of skills that go into manufacturing of these things in these different places, right? And why you can only make them in certain places. And you have these people moonlighting, making this. And part of what they were discussing, to your story, Kosin, is the amount of chip decapping and faking of things, and they'll sell you the high-end version the first time, then the rest of the manufacturing is the stuff that they got out of refurb parts of the other manufacturing plant across the street that was throwing and decapping these things away, and you get a ton of that. And there is a lot of discussion on that. That said, I would point to 2 things. China is improving on those things thanks to Apple. Apple taught them, I keep pointing you guys to this book. Please, go read Apple in China. It opened my eyes massively to how much we fucked up, or really Apple fucked up, in getting locked into this weird death trap where they invested tens of billions of dollars to teach China how to do high-end manufacturing, thinking that the Chinese were never going to be able to do it by themselves. And then you suddenly get, these Huawei and Oppo phones and all these amazing bits of technology because they figured out how to do it, because they were the ones building and you were paying them to learn. the other thing that I would point to is Ryan made the comment of like, well, 10 years from now, the US will be 10 years further. I don't know, because I agree that I think we will be intellectually, conceptually 10 years ahead. But
this is what the AI cybersecurity, the executive order on cybersecurity is kind of setting up. Like the US policy is setting up for this, where China will always be years behind. We'll always have the more advanced technology, the more advanced chips, and the more we control what they have access to. That's the argument.
Yeah, but the problem that you have, once again, like I said this, I think 30 minutes ago, it's like we are all people who are way too connected to the internet and think of everything in instantaneous, conceptual, ephemeral ways. And we don't think about the hardware component, the CapEx component of all these things. The US can be 10 years ahead intellectually. Who the fuck is building the things that we're coming up with? And if the answer is, oh, don't worry, it doesn't have to be China because we have Taiwan, then you understand why everyone's been freaking the fuck out about the fact that the Chinese can just reach out and grab Taiwan. That is the base of our most advanced manufacturing. That is in China. And then you go, okay, well, there's some stuff in South Korea, and like we're trying to get India to ramp up, or Vietnam, but then you have to spend, how much did Apple spend teaching the Chinese how to do this thing? Well, now you have to do it there, but without the existence of that surrounding supply chain, where in China, when you are missing a machine, there's a place, 3 miles down the road that makes that machine. And if that place is running out of a chip, there's a place 5 miles down the road that makes that chip. You cannot just, like, the same way we couldn't just teleport TSMC to Arizona, we can't just suddenly turn India. Well, we're trying, but like, how
CHIPS
much
Act money is like, there's scaffolding everywhere near my house here with CHIPS Act money bringing TSMC here to Arizona.
And expect it to not be nearly enough. And like the discussions people have about what's happening at those fabs, it's not that they're all bad. It's not that they're not coming anywhere, but like, you're depending almost entirely on Taiwanese expertise. And we haven't exactly made them feel at home. Those people aren't happy here. So like, maybe we should embrace them just a tiny bit more. Maybe not all immigrants are terrible, right? Then you also have the lack of that surrounding supply chain. And that's my point, right? Like, okay, you have a TSMC manufacturing plant for ultra advanced 7 nanometer chips in Arizona. Cool. Every time they need something to build the thing you want them to build, that isn't the thing they build. Where the fuck are those parts coming from? Are they coming from China? Are they coming from Taiwan? Do you have to wait 3 months for something to show up, right? Like, you just don't have... You cannot just teleport this entire manufacturing ecosystem and everyone involved in it. If we wanted to spend those 30 billion, if somebody's going to spend 30 or 50 billion over however many years teaching a whole swath of people how to make these things, I hope that we at least make it in a country we can rely on. Like, you're going to India now and you go, cool, the world's largest democracy, which has been suffering this giant, like, slide into a similar, like, slightly dictatorial, nationalistic thing under Modi. Okay, what a wonderful way to, like, kick the can down the road, but not very far down the road, right? So I think the discussions are starting to pivot around, like, what does it mean to have manufacturing capability within your ally bloc? And then the question becomes, what is the country in the West that has space and people and cheap labor and a cultural affinity and is not positioned somewhere where it's precarious and dangerous because somebody could take it away from you, and has resources, has electricity, has cheap labor, right? Like Mexico, probably. You have to clean it up, but like Mexico. Like, those are the discussions that are being had, but that comes with who's sitting on $50 billion that they're willing to do to jumpstart another foreign manufacturing, whatever. and the optics of that, because you have a bunch of people in the US that you've been promising jobs to that you have no intention of paying jobs to because they're too expensive and they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
We are an hour and 18 minutes in, and we haven't touched the news story yet. This is a news-based podcast.
I
don't
say
know
this
when
is
we
your
got
fault as our moderator. If we're going down the wrong path, it's your fault.
It's all right. I love these tangents. Can we talk a little bit? This week was Patch Tuesday. And of course, Microsoft led the way. We got a massive 107 new CVEs in Windows and Windows components. Office, Microsoft Edge, Azure, GitHub Copilot, Dynamics 365, Hyper-V Server, SQL Server. 12 critical, 1 moderate. I think 1 was a CVSS 9.8 remote code execution. Costin, when you looked at the list here with all these criticals, you have some advice for people managing Windows fleets on which one they should pay attention to? What stands out as the high priority thing here for you?
It feels like this is, how to say, it's kind of normal. I don't freak out a lot about this anymore.
It's amazing. It's amazing that 100 CVE drops, 12 critical, RCEs everywhere, and we're just like about a month.
Another day, another 100 of things to patch. Like, you just patch them, move along. If you ask me, like, okay, I understand the question. Yeah, sure. Remote code executions are the ones that typically attract people's attention. But I also just want to emphasize there's more and more interest towards anything which has to do with hypervisor, virtualization, because threat actors take advantage of those things as well. They do take advantage of any kind of vulnerability in virtualization platforms like VMware ESXi. So I would say that if I was running some kind of a large fleet of machines with virtualization, I would always focus on making sure those are patched first. Why? Because typically it's the most difficult thing to do. When you need to patch your virtualization servers, you need to restart not just the server itself, but everything that's running on that server. And typically that is a nuisance, and it can be very disruptive, crashes, and so on. And for this reason alone, people typically choose to postpone patches for virtualization components. Like here, there's a couple of bugs for Windows Hyper-V. So if you can try to pay more attention to any kind of virtualization related vulnerabilities on a regular basis, I think that's going to pay off on the long run. But of course, remote code executions are always top priority.
And we want to applaud Microsoft for not having an in the wild 0 day in this batch, right?
We know about.
Yeah. None of it is public. None of it has been documented as exploited. So people get a chance to patch before anything gets crazy. Juanito, you look at Patch Tuesday at all, or this is just another ho-hum day of the week for you?
Look, man, you just gotta hunt what drops from the O days at this point. Like that is definitely.
Let's talk about O days then.
Do we have
Let's shift to yeah, because we haven't done an Ivanti segment in a long time. We don't have Ivanti on the agenda here, but we have a Fortinet 0 day. We have the 67th documented O day in 2025 is a FortiCM CVE 2025-25256 that is being actively exploited in the wild. Remote non-authenticated attacker to execute arbitrary code. What more can be said about these network devices and these appliances and the 0 day carnage in that world?
Just a small comment, which at least as I can say, or at least this was true when I looked at the story, there were discussions of a POC being available, but I think Tenable that also looked at this, they said there is no proof that this is being exploited in the wild. So again, it's always a matter of time before this gets exploited in the wild. But
Fortinet
at least
says, wait a second, just from the advisory, Fortinet says practical exploit code for this vulnerability was found in the wild. Now explain that bit of wording for me. Practical exploit code?
I think they referred to the fact that there's a POC being talked about and available, things like that. But I don't know, or at least there's no evidence. There's no strong evidence that this is being actively exploited in the wild. Of course, by the time we publish this, it may already be old news and true. You never know.
Massive exploitation.
There'll be massive exploitation for people using this thingy, which, by the way, what is 40 cm? This is like, I don't remember seeing this vulnerable component, 40 cm, before. So at least props for some diversity, some new things here.
SonicWall also had to push out an advisory this week, staying in the same place around some malicious activity that some other vendors had flagged. And they updated this advisory to say, we now have high confidence that this recent SSLVPN activity is not connected to a zero-day. So some vendors are reporting, listen, we're starting to see some malicious activity around your SSLVPN. One of the original workarounds they issued was basically disable SSLVPN in a use case.
There, solved it.
Juan, from your, I mean, we've beaten this to death. Is there anything else left to talk about what we should be expecting? I mean, from these vendors, I note here on our list here is also a Cisco Secure Firewall Management Center, CVSS max of 10, remote code execution, just like unauthenticated remote attacker can inject shell commands. It feels like these things are riddled everywhere, and they're all just kind of like,
they are. I also think it's absolutely fucking hilarious that like the exploited in the wild, the presence of these ODAs being exploited in the wild seems to match whether people in the security industry have time on their hands, right? Like
this is true.
So during Black Hat and DEF CON, there's none. You go because your capability is, your discovery capability is actually somebody sitting on the wire somewhere in the middle of all this that keeps feeding you the vulns, but you wouldn't find them yourself. You wouldn't tell us yourself. You wouldn't know. So yeah, it's the same thing we've been expecting. It's like, fuck these people.
All right, let's move on from that then, because I feel like if you listen to this podcast enough, we've talked about these network device and appliance vendors and the Ivantis of this world and all of these guys who signed the pledge but just kind of trudge along. Their stock price doesn't get affected either, which is another point. It's like...
You're going to talk about the Cisco thingy or not?
You want to talk about the Cisco thingy? Yes, separately from within that, we have a Secure Firewall Management Center, CVSS 10.
I don't know. Is it 10.0 CVSS?
Yeah. I mean, this is the highest of the highest, talking about RCE and you know, this is something you got to patch immediately. You have some thoughts there? There are no IOCs?
No. I was more on the line that, look, like this week, there's a lot of network equipment vendor related stories, which, again, there's no surprise there. We're going to hear more and more of these stories as time passes, like you were saying. And it's just like to complete the picture. I thought we had like SonicWall, there was Fortinet, so how can we skip Cisco?
Shout out to Cisco for patching it ahead of time. And a note that this was internally discovered by Cisco during their own internal testing, which is, again, another plus. I think we should find ways to give applause when it's necessary.
That's cool.
I want to shift gears. We're just got about another 20 minutes left, but I want to give Costin a chance to respond to this. An article on Margin Research. Margin researcher Kieran Green responded... had originally published about cyber militias in China. Costin objected to the use of the word malicious, saying that we are treading in dangerous territory. Kieran, actually, as a listener, shout out for listening to our podcast. We have a new listener. Actually referenced our podcast discussion and makes the argument that militias are fundamentally different from these ad hoc contractors or volunteer models we see in other places. And not recognizing where militias sit within this direct connection to the Chinese military kind of underestimates what China's capabilities, you know, in future conflict or whatever. And if you're really looking at the ecosystem, it's important to map it legally how it works. Defending the use of militias as saying, listen, they are militias. I mean, that's how it's built into the system. Does that change your mind, Costin, in terms of how this is documented? You got a response?
Look, I like the article. It's a very nice article. So all the respect for Kieran for putting this together. And I do think there was a need for more explanations into how this system is working. Now, without getting sentimental or anything, I grew up in communist times, and
the good old days.
oh man, don't remind me, please. But I just wanted to say a few things as I grew up in the communist.
As a 14-year-old, like marching in the streets and stuff.
I see your pioneer and I raise you militia. So I was a member of a militia, if you want. Everyone was. In communism, we were members of detachments. We were organized in units, detachments. And,
how old were you?
16?
I mean, all the way up to the revolution in 89. I was born in 77. So at best, I was 12 years old. But everyone was part of some militia bloc in the communist times, in the Romanian Socialist Republic. And that started with things like, very early pioneers, but as you aged and you became older, then you get incorporated into detachments, and then you go through something that was called the preparation of youth for the defense of homeland, which was essentially some kind of a bullshit courses on how to hold a wooden rifle.
A wooden
in case
rifle?
we get invaded by the Americans. Yeah, a wooden rifle.
Do they hand you real rifles if they do come?
They hand you wooden rifles, and they said, this is how you hold the rifle.
He's telling the truth. This is my childhood.
I'm honest.
This is my childhood in communist Guyana.
I grew up in communist times, and I was a member of one of these. For sure, the word here that you want to say. Now, in our country, we wouldn't call them militias because militia was the police. And there was like a dedicated term for the police that was militia. That was the equivalent of the police. But what we were doing here, we were like paramilitary organizations and parallel structures that, in theory, were supposed, in my opinion, to keep people busy. Because in the communist times, nobody was depressed. Nobody was like, you ask, the teenagers nowadays, hey man, how are you? And they're like, I'm bored. I saw everything on Netflix. I'm super bored.
There was no boredom in communism.
In the communist times, like nobody had time to be bored, man. Because everyone was like busy, I don't know, in the fields, doing
working
the crops,
for the motherland.
or like harvesting nuts, or like all sorts of crazy things, like
scrounging for food.
Dandelion, like everybody had to deliver 4 kilograms of dandelion on a Sunday. Yeah, like what? You didn't have to do this?
Let him
what
make
the
his point.
fuck? Yeah.
So yeah, my grandparents went like in the woods to find 4 kilograms, because you can't find 4 kilograms. Where to find it? Like you go in the park and it's already been harvested. Like all the other 500 students at my school harvested all the fucking dandelion in the park. There's nothing left. So my grandparents drove like 20 kilometers to the forest to find dandelions, and they came back with 4 kilograms of that stuff, only to be rejected because it said, well, the administrator was like, no, this is wild dandelion. It's not medicinal. Like, it's not good. Like, we reject it. So what the fuck? Anyways, what I meant is that I feel that, and I remember all these communist times and the militias and the paramilitary groups. But what I want to say is that at least in Romania, it was a major fuck up. Nothing was working. If we, just imagine we got invaded, nobody was ready for anything with the wooden rifles to do shit.
Right.
It was a total scam.
Theater. Yeah.
It was a scam. It was like a huge, absolute scam, if you want that. All of that, maybe the only reason to do that was just to keep people busy and their minds occupied somehow, and to create this impression of an enemy.
There's a certain nationalistic
and fear that we're going to get invaded, although we were surrounded by friends on all sides. So I don't know how they would invade us, but nevertheless. And I do understand that it's part of this communist mentality and system. And I thought there was like a very cool point here in the article that Kieran was talking about, that yes, these roles, right, the done way, which, well, this is a kind of a work unit, and these work units or detachments, like we used to call them, their roles kind of faded as China began reforming its economy in the 1980s. So the only thing that I wanted to say, like, I do hope that China somehow managed to implement this better than we did in Romania in the communist times. I do, because in
the
our
argument
case,
is they are
they
doing
were
it.
a disaster.
Chihu and Anti and Aisun, they're already doing it. We're already seeing this kind of private sector merging of activities. And Kieran is making the argument that it's legally mandated, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the argument...
What I was saying is that the way I see it with my experience, and what I said is that I hope that China managed to implement this better than us, in the sense that they do harvest better things at wild dandelion from the forest on a Sunday.
They are, though. That's the point.
Well, it's funny. Okay, so several points here, right? And I think, Kostin, what you are bringing up is an important perspective that people in the U.S. tend to forget, or people in the West tend to forget, which is the amount of what I get in China is referred to as formalism that comes around with things like communism, where, you know, you set these hard requirements and you tell people what they're supposed to do in order to be good with the party. And it turns out everybody does the malicious compliance version of that, where it's like, oh, you need this dandelion shit. Like, okay, let me find, like, I'm just going to stockpile, you know, I'm going to smuggle all this dandelion and like hand it to you. And then that way, you know, we're fine. But it's not actually helping the economy. It's not actually helping the place. It's not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And like, it happens a lot in China around like shit tons of paperwork and like meetings and things that are meant to show party allegiance. Sorry, I'm listening to a biography of Xi Jinping right now. And I'm starting to learn a little bit about China. But in any case, like, that's an issue that you get with all forms of communism. It's why like bureaucracies kind of sprawl to an insane level. And it's part of keeping people busy. It's part of people keeping people dependent on the country and the party. But it's also part of why these organizations tend to kind of rot from the inside. And when you actually need them to perform, they seldom are in a position where they can do any of what they say they're doing. So I take your point there. And I think when we first talked about the militia thing, I said, well, what does it look like to be in a militia in any way that means that you are trained and able to like, you know, how do you pick up your cyber equivalent of a wooden rifle, your, you know, Cobalt Strike beacon package, and then like know exactly how to operate with the rest of you know, a force, right? Like a militia, part of the complexities of a militia is how do you fold, or like a National Guard, how do you fold them into effectively functioning with the rest of the military in ways that are meaningful, actually follow chain of command, do things the way that you expect them to do it, et cetera. And that was the first discussion we had around sort of the militia stuff, is like, what does that mean? I think something that was really interesting that gets mentioned here is the idea of like there being like prepackaged functionality, like that they basically have this way of like, I don't know, I guess like PLA in a box, right? Like they have some way to like bring up some prepackaged way that like includes like UAV operators and like all these different things. So in some sense, I'm not saying that I ever want to see this in deployment, but I am very curious as to what the Chinese have, whether they've figured it out. And there is a way to like have some like rapid support force of like relatively competent corporate sector people who can fold into whatever it is that cyber does during a time of war. Or like Kostin is aptly pointing out, it's once again a whole lot of lip service and a whole lot of, you know, beautiful propaganda papering over something that doesn't work, is a waste of money, nobody thinks is going to work, nobody who actually does the thing actually believes in. And ultimately, I don't know if that changes the point that Margin Research is making here, or that Kieran's making here, which is really not so much about the effectiveness of the militia, but the fact that you have these companies that try to act as international companies that are officially folded into being some part of the offensive capabilities of the Chinese government, and how should we be looking at them, right? Like, to what degree? And I think everybody already has some level of like whatever suspiciousness around Huawei and so on. But even like looking at 360 and Anti and so on, you go, okay, if I tell you that this company, like we've banned and sanctioned companies for less, for like just rumors and like whatever, and all the stuff around Kaspersky, it did not rise to the level of saying, oh, these people are being trained and officially enrolled in a government offensive and defensive support capability for the military, and they provide you with this service that has some level of control of your computer. Like you were nowhere near that. It was mostly innuendo, and like, look at the reactions. Okay, why shouldn't we be looking at companies like Huawei and others in that same way, where they will actually push some knobs, turn some buttons, put their people in the service of the government?
Costin, does this
just
follow up
loved,
piece?
I don't know. I just wanted to say I love the sense of humor and all the photos and the comments on the photo. Like, you need to read the blog just for those, at least for those. But of course, the whole thing is pretty cool. I mean, look, I think this, by the way, the part of being depressed and the differences between the Eastern societies, China, the West, and so on. I mean, yeah, you can say on one hand, they have their militias, and we have our, what was it? Indicas, green caffeine, blue dream, and so on.
Sativas and so on. Yes.
And pens. Many pens.
We have a New York Times piece on Russia being blamed for a recent hack of the U.S. federal court system. Investigators uncovered evidence that Russia is at least partly responsible for a recent hack of the computer system that manages U.S. federal court documents, including highly sensitive records that might contain information that could reveal sources and people charged with national security crimes. No evidence, no any sort of documentation, but we know that there's been news around this U.S. federal court system hack. Juanito, this is regular espionage in your mind, that we should just kind of spy, and this is what they do?
I'm actually really curious about this, because like they put it as like a PSIRT hack, and my understanding of PSIRT is that it is a subscription, like it is a public record thing that you can pay. And like, I remember like Brian Bartholomew used to be like the ultimate PSIRT like searcher, right? Like, he would go and find this like cool shit, anything
journalists
that was like
use it all the
unfolding.
time. Journalists are always like scraping there looking for like news items.
So I don't want to sound super ignorant, but I don't know if does PSIRT hold some greater, classification of stuff or documents that are sealed, or like things from like grand jury indictments, or like is there a version of PSIRT that supports some greater courts capability that isn't just whatever public, you can pay for stuff? Because
possible.
I mean, if it does, then really interesting target. If it doesn't, also really interesting target, just because like having, I mean, as a data hoarder and somebody who appreciates good intelligence analysis, I think that's a prime fucking target for any country that wants to understand you, wants to have a sense of like endemic corruption, opportunities for recruitment, that wants to even be able to keep some level of understanding about possible like counterintelligence issues that you get, right? Like, at what point does something get filed for, let's say, an attempt to pick up a hacker who happens to be transitioning through wherever? My assumption with something like PSIRT is that you're not getting that level of like insight. It's public records. But at that point, the value that you would get as an espionage team would be in the mass collection, right? Like that at that point, you can do some pretty interesting analytics on some of that stuff. Now, what I'll say is, yeah, I think I saw the response from President Trump, and like, I don't
Well, let
love
me
it.
read
I
that
don't.
first. Let me
Yeah,
read the
yeah.
response because Sean McCreech from the New York Times was with Trump at the Kennedy Center. He asked Trump if he'd seen these reports of the Russian hacking computer systems that manage U.S. federal court documents and if he planned to bring it up with Putin when he met in Alaska. And his answer was, "Are you surprised? That's what they do. They're good at it." And then the kicker is, we're good at it. We're actually better at it, which reminds me of a certain general saying, "We're number one."
The
You
best.
don't like the hockey statement. It's kind of like a flex. But what were you going to say about the Trump statement?
Well, so I don't love the normalization of these things because I think there is a reason why in diplomacy you still wag your finger at something that you want to discourage. So I don't love that we're just like, so what? Yeah, they do this, we do it better. At the same time,
It's the truth.
at least we're not doing this like insane drum beating like the solar winds thing. No one shut the fuck up about solar winds over and over like it was this categorical red crossing of a red line and like that's not how you
People
do
sold
X,
a lot
Y,
of
and
software.
Z. Bro, what was the problem with solar winds? Like apart from having egg on your face and saying, shit, man, you guys bested us, like you did some cool shit, like, you know, hat tip to you. What the fuck was the problem? And like here's where you get into this odd thing where it's like it's not like I want to agree with this administration, yes or no, but like at least we don't have to spend 2 news cycles explaining to people that like this attack, like someone spying on Pacer isn't the thing that like World War III should hinge on. It isn't the thing that like global, you know, policy should be. We should stop all the trains to make sure someone gets the message. It's like, what the fuck's the message? You're doing espionage in another country. Everybody does espionage in another country. We wish you wouldn't do it, but, you know, hat tip to you and like, let's improve our defenses. And like, let's save the real condemnations for when somebody does something that you don't approve of, like fucking with a dam or fucking with
I wanted to pivot. You
electricity
mentioned
or,
World War
yeah,
III. I mean, there's
exactly.
some pipeline shit happening in Europe, and there's some public reporting bubbling up out of Norway. Russian hackers took control of a Norwegian dam, opening a floodgate and entering water to flow unnoticed for hours, according to Norwegian intelligence services. And then a couple of days later, we had a large Polish city. So Poland was dealing with its water supply cut off as a result of a cyber attack, according to information from their deputy prime minister. He did not specify who was behind the attack, but also made a point that Poland is a main target for Russia among NATO countries. So there's some real, in addition to the spy, which we all understand spy, and we accept that. Some of this stuff in Europe costing us. So someone who's close to the ground here, does this stuff make you nervous, or this is all war-related thing that you can understand as well?
No, yeah, it's kind of the order of the day, if you want. What everyone around here is worried or, let's say, cares about is that today, in a couple of hours, Trump is meeting Putin in Alaska to discuss the peace in Ukraine. So obviously, that's a super, super big thing, very important event. So these other, let's say, parallel things, sabotages, obviously, they've been happening for some time, like weapon depots in Czech Republics, attempt to assassinate Bulgarian arms dealers. Even in Romania, I think they arrested one South American guy who was trying to burn some kind of storage facility in Bucharest on the command of Russia. So
The French
in
have
a
been
way,
murmuring about sabotage.
correct,
I mean, it's
during
all over
also
Western
during the
Europe.
Olympic Games. But again, for now, we haven't seen like any of this being successful and any of these things being like really big. There was also another article about the attempt to plant some kind of explosive devices in airplanes or like as a courier services. It's a situation like people don't necessarily get quite worried about this, but it's something that you accept as being the de facto order of things. So we'll have to see what happens tonight with Trump and Putin, and can hope for the best.
Juanito, some closing thoughts on the pipeline stuff and some of the stuff happening in Europe? I mean, this kind of physical activity we also discussed as it relates to Iran, Israel as well. Some of like the steel mill and some of that stuff. This is normal war type things?
Well, they're normal wartime things, but I'm saying, okay, it's okay for us to like not get super bent out of shape about an espionage operation like the whole PSIRT thing in order to set the right baseline to get bent out of shape around an attack on a dam, an attack on like though, and I think that's where you need to save your pearl clutching for the right moments, otherwise it just comes off as hand wringing, and that is the stuff we should be scared of because there are no standards around that kind of stuff, and the Russians have shown that they're more than willing to use these capabilities in like dumb, inconsiderate, genuinely destructive moments, whether in or out of a real war. So I sympathize with the Poles and Polish people, the Norwegians, the Finns, the Swedes, all these folks that share a border and have been very concerned and have been on high alert doing counter intel work for like 10 years now and keep routinely letting us know, hey, we caught them doing this. Hey, we saw a submarine picking up some asshole off the coast. Hey, like we found some quote unquote tourist who keeps taking pictures of all of our critical infrastructure sites for power generation. It's just like it's been trickling consistently. And we ignore, like, there's a reason the Europeans don't have this much infighting about whether Russia is a good state or not, whether they're a good trading partner or not, because the Europeans know that they're in the midst of a ton of like assassinations, sabotage, active sabotage, preparations for sabotage, like all kinds of shit that let you know that somebody thinks of you as like their area of operations.
Very good. We leave it there for this week. There's a ton of other stories we didn't get to because you guys started philosophizing and making this into the philosophy.
People can read the news on their own.
We missed the most important story, in my opinion, at least for those of us living in Europe. So just give me like 15 seconds. If you're living in the European Union and you care about privacy, chat control is back. So there's a website, fightchatcontrol.eu, where you can go and try to swing the vote if you want. In October, you can select the members of the European Parliament that represent your country and then send them an email trying to convince them not to vote in favor of chat control, which in my opinion will be disastrous for Europe if that happens.
According to the reporting, 19 of 27 countries back mandatory pre-encryption scanning. Where is Romania in that?
Undecided. But typically Romania will vote with whatever the consensus in the European Parliament will be. And the fear is that the consensus will swing in favor of chat control.
That's where the wind is blowing. You guys feel like the wind is blowing towards that. What, do you have a quick thought on what's happening in the UK around using VPNs as well?
Well, there's obviously a lot of things. So maybe like as a very brief thing with the age verification in the UK, my personal observation is again that things in the UK are kind of ahead of the curve. Remember also with the advanced data protection in iCloud that became unavailable in the UK for a while because again encryption is let's say causing problems. Now age checks, now things like VPNs, all of that is coming for the European Union next, in my opinion, if people don't understand what this means and what are the risks. And also I think just like a kind of a small head tip to the magic money segment that we've been avoiding for some while.
I can't believe I thought you were going to go for that. Like the Europeans trying to shoot themselves in the foot on privacy happens every 3 months.
You fuckers philosophied for an hour and 10 minutes on the future of the world.
But there's a lot of
attacks. Just because you have like real work, Ryan, doesn't mean we, these people need our commentary.
We're almost at the 2-hour mark. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. Juanito, close the show with some shout-outs. Oh, I should make an announcement. We will be doing a live episode of the Three-Body Problem at LabsCon this year. I don't know if that's much of an incentive for people to come because the conference is sold out. We really don't have any tickets to sell.
I love that we didn't announce any talks, any speakers, any events until the conference is sold out. Now we're like, oh, well, FOMO
now
land.
Now we're waiting to do promo and there's nothing to really sell. Quickly, some quick LabsCon update from your side.
Well, so we, as you mentioned, right, we're sold out now. So thanks to everybody. We also have an amazing roster of sponsors that have gotten us there, which, I won't go through the list right now, but the logos are up on the site. But thank you to all of them. And we have an amazing agenda, which we will be announcing, I believe, this coming week. The web team is kind of putting their stuff together. And that includes some keynotes that we're truly excited about. Some of them will have to remain a mystery. There's at least one. Actually, there's at least two of them that will remain TLP red, and we cannot say who or what it is that they're bringing, but it will be phenomenal. We also have, I guess I'll announce a couple of them if Ryan, you want to
go.
So let's. Thomas Rid is going to be bringing us a preview of some of his discoveries for this new book that we're all extremely excited about. I won't spoil what it is, but it's genuinely fascinating from the CTI side of things. And Mark Spencer, a good friend of ours who has been working on some of the most egregious cases on evidence tampering and abuses through cyber, state abuses on some unsuspecting and innocent folks, is going to come bring us some pretty new, interesting, juicy perspective on some of that.
And he's interesting because he does a lot of this stuff pro bono,
it's
really
amazing.
helping activists and some folks on the ground just kind of deal with it when governments and some nefarious people plant stuff on your device and then try to railroad you through the legal system there. So he'll be talking a little bit about some of the techniques they use and how they go about doing this level of forensics to be able to flag this stuff. I'm super excited about that one.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I won't spoil it. Well, I don't know. I think we've got some amazing stuff. There's some workshops on robotics. There's, we're going to have our first OSINT CTF happening we've got a lot of very interesting things coming along, but I won't spoil all of the agenda. I'll just sort of drum up the excitement and,
we're announcing the agenda next week.
I believe so. So as web team per meeting, we will be announcing the agenda next week, but, yes, I look forward to seeing the folks that listen to us as we kept bitching about this and drumming up excitement over the past few months. Now, it is what it is.
Sounds good. From my side, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my friend Perry Adams, our friend Perry, and DARPA and the AI Cyber Challenge that happened at DEF CON. They just had the finals. Perry and I are going to be doing an interview for the Security Conversations podcast on that entire thing and connecting the micro to what happened there to the macro. So congratulations to all the folks, all the winners. I saw Samsung participated, a lot of big teams participated, and hopefully we'll get some open source outputs out of that. That'll make
they're supposed to, right?
change.
They're supposed to do it's part of the AICC thing is the tooling should be open sourced. So
yeah, I heard some rumblings and some complaints that not all of it is. So
yeah.
I'm probably going to ask Perry about that. But congrats to everyone there, Trail of Bits, Team Atlanta, and a bunch of other, I think, what was the other one? I don't remember the third. Congrats to those folks. And there's going to be a lot of stuff for us to catch up with next week. We are going to keep this backlog of stories. Costin has to do a Magic Money episode.
4-hour episode next week is what you're saying. We're going to get to that 4-hour mark.
We'll finally get to the 4-hour mark next week.
You heard him, people.
Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you guys next week.
Thank you, guys.
Ciao, bye.
Bye-bye.